here on the Nick, Josh, and Aaron Sports Talk Radio Show. We were able to get the computer working for the break, which was good. So we're into now our second segment here. We'll take you right up to 4 o'clock, and we will transition now to talking about college football. But before we do that, Nick, you said you had a comment on your Facebook Live post?
Yeah, basically what we were talking about earlier when we brought up the managers, one of our viewers posted, we thank you for your comments, we do appreciate it, about why are we putting so much emphasis on managers, and so then should we blame whoever the losing manager is for that team? Should we blame them? That's basically what they said.
Do you want to answer that first?
I think managers do have a part to play in it. Granted, they're not on the field, they're not batting, they're not pitching, but they are choosing and deciding who to put in certain situations, which in turn impacts the outcome of the game. So while they're not directly involved on the field, I do think they have a part to play in the outcome, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously at the end of the day, it's always going to come down to the players to be able to make the plays, because they're really the only ones that can win the game for you is on the field. But I do think the managers play a big part because, I mean, you have to make the best decision and put your players in the best position possible to play well. And, you know, if you put them in a good position, then and they mess up, then that's on the players. Because, you know, obviously even the best players aren't going to play well every single game. I mean, that's just the way sports are. That's human nature. But I do think the managers need to try and put their players into the best situations possible. And, you know, if there's a decision that, you know, could go one way or could go the other, like, you know, why did you choose this pinch hitter over the other one you could have chosen, or why did you take out this pitcher and bring in so-and-so? You know, managers are going to have answers to those questions after the game.
No, absolutely, which is why I think they should have, you know, to answer those questions. They should accept a little bit of blame because, like I said, granted not directly involved. You know, they still make those decisions about who's in the game and lineup decisions, so which in turn impacts the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, they are one part of the team. So I think no manager could be given all the credit for winning a World Series, and I don't think all the blame could be placed on a manager for losing it either. They're part of their team with their players. So I think the winning or losing, either praise or blame, should get spread around between the manager and his players, because they all have their part to play in the games. So.
No, absolutely, yes. So that's the response to the comment. Thank you for running into us. For anyone else who's watching the Facebook live stream right now, just let us know any comments, concerns, anything you want us to talk about. We greatly appreciate your feedback. But with that said, transitioning to college football.
All right, so this week, I think we have 3 games that will be pitting ranked teams against each other. One out of the Pac-12, which is number 4 Washington at number 17 Utah. Out of the Big Ten, we have number 7 Nebraska at number 11 Wisconsin. And then in the ACC, we have number 3 Clemson at number 12 Florida State. So do any one of those 3 games stand out to you that you want to start off with?
Oh man, all 3 of those games look to be really good games and could have, you know, big playoff, you know, implications, because all these teams are trying to make a, you know, run to get into those top 4 spots. I guess since the last one you mentioned Clemson, Florida State, that'll be interesting. I mean, Florida State already has 2 losses, and they're ranked number 12. I don't think they're as likely to get in, but if Clemson wants to get in, this is a win they need to have, especially since they've had some scares in the past where they were playing at home against NC State, and that game went to overtime, and that never should have been that close. Never, ever should have came down to the last play of the game, which it did. And the reason they went to overtime is because NC State missed a potential game-winning field goal. So I think we need a ranked team. There's a chance to do it on the road even. So if there's any hopes of getting into one of those 4 spots, they need to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could talk about 2 of these games sort of in the same light because I think Clemson and Washington are both in the same boat here because both of them are undefeated. They're both 7-0, and I mean, yes, the ACC and the Pac-12 are great conferences in comparison to some of the lower conferences, but the ACC games for both Clemson and Washington will be their toughest games that they have remaining on their schedule because I mean after this Washington and their Washington is USC. Washington, but I mean they're the team. I mean Clemson the hardest going to be so I think, as I said, both 2 teams need to go undefeated to make it into the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see if either one of these teams slip up because they're both on the road. Utah, Washington, and Clemson are definitely better teams than who they're playing. Utah and Florida State, but I mean those are 2 tough atmospheres to play in, especially when you know you have the pressure of being undefeated and having everything on the line in these games. So, do you think that either one of these 2 road favorites will stumble, and do you think either team will get on the road?
It's tough to say because both teams. Well, I think Washington has. I think out of both of them, I think outcomes. Grand teams are probably not the best. They're probably not that strong. Clemson, not that they're going to lose. The best NC State showing them out by at least. So I still think Clemson for their team. I think they finally got their act together. They're finally going to rebound from a lot of those close games they had that never should have been close. And then when Louisville, that was a really good team they played, but that was also very close too. But I think Clemson's going to win. I think Washington's going to win. I think it's just going to be a little bit harder on Clemson.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. Because I think Florida State hasn't been that good this year in terms of, where they normally are, because they got blown out by Louisville. I mean, Louisville is a very good team in their own right, but they got blown out by Louisville, and then they lost a close game to North Carolina as well, and they only beat Wake Forest by a couple. They only beat Miami by 1. So Florida State is not as good as they have been. But yeah, I think Clemson, as you said, I think Clemson and Washington will both probably win, but if there's any games that they were to lose, I think it'd probably be this weekend. And then with Washington, if Washington wins this game, they're probably gonna win the rest of their regular season games, because of how much easier their schedule is. So I think that Um, they could end up facing Utah again, because if Washington wins the Pac-12 North, I think Utah is probably the best team right now in the Pac-12 South. So we could end up seeing this rematch in the Pac-12 conference championship game, which I think Washington would need to win again. So do you think that if both Washington and Clemson can stay and go undefeated this entire season and win their conference championships, do you think that both of those teams would make it into the Final Four playoffs?
Well, yeah, the way it is now, Clemson's ranked third, Washington's ranked fourth, so I think so, especially with, obviously, like I said before, Washington hasn't played the best teams, but just to be consistently able to blow out people and put up a lot of points, that looks really good for you, and to be able to be consistent. Like, obviously, they put up 48 when they played Rutgers, they put up 59 against Idaho, 41 against Portland State. Obviously, none of those teams are any that good, but, to be able to consistently do it, and then they blew out Stanford 44-6, whom Stanford is generally regarded as a good team. Granted, this year they're not as good as we've seen in the past. Same thing with Oregon. But they dropped 44 on Stanford, 70 on Oregon, and then come back again against Oregon State, drop another 41. That looks pretty good for them in terms of being able to score, have a solid offense, play consistently. So I think as long as Washington can do that and they win out the rest of their schedule, I don't see how you could keep this team out.
Yeah. Also something to talk about from last week is Ohio State losing.
Yeah.
To Penn State. So that's not that eliminates Ohio State from the playoffs by any means, but it makes their road harder to get there, because I think now for Ohio State they would need to they would definitely need to beat Michigan, and then they would need to win the Big 12 conference championship game, because Alabama is pretty much as much of a close to a 100% certainty that you can get of them making the Final Four, and then Michigan probably the winner of the Michigan-Ohio State game, if they win their conference championship, they're going to get in as well. So do you think that then both, if Clemson, you said that if Clemson and Washington both stay undefeated, then that both of them would make it?
I think so. Because
I think even though Clemson's ranked higher, I would agree that Washington probably has a better chance of making it because of how dominant they've been and how much they've blown out their opposition by.
Yeah, even though, like I said, their opposition, some of it hasn't been that good and that talented, but if you can do that consistently, that looks really good for you to get in. Ohio State, I don't know what happened to them. There's special teams blunder last week in the game at Penn State, but they dropped from number 2 to now to number 6. So they definitely have a lot of work to do. They would definitely need to beat Michigan for sure in order to have any hopes of getting in, because that's a team right now that's took their spot at number 2 and is looking pretty strong, a pretty strong case to be included in that top 4 as well. But there's still some time. There's still games left to be played. Alabama still got some quality opponents on their schedule. They have to go to LSU, not this week, but on November 5th. They're playing at LSU. So it'll be interesting to see a team that's been able to challenge them in the past. Granted, they've undergone some changes. They fired Les Miles, but that'll still be an interesting game. And obviously the annual Auburn-Alabama game, because there's a lot at stake, bragging rights, they're bitter rivals. So, right now Alabama's looking really good, but I would think not that this would happen, but I'm just saying if they were to lose, say those 2 games, I think they would, again, have some questions surrounding them, even though they're Alabama, and they're pretty much as close to a college football dynasty as you can get. I still think that there's still time for this all to be figured out, but teams definitely need to start winning, starting to step up. Like I said, Ohio State just needs to win out pretty much from here on out in order to prove that they deserve to be in, even though they had that hiccup against a significantly weaker Penn State team.
Yeah. I don't think Alabama will lose in the regular season at all. Although, yeah, you said I think those games against LSU and Auburn could be close, but I don't see them losing at all. And yeah, Michigan's in a pretty good spot right now, but that that Michigan-Ohio State game, even though Ohio State lost, that's still going to be a very crucial game at the end of the season for both of those two teams. So
Yeah, definitely good for Ohio State. They have home field, so that is really their chance to redeem themselves. If they don't lose before then, that'd be a great way to show the committee, okay, we lost that one game, but we still deserve to get in because we're able to hang with this quality of a team. Because Michigan, they've looked really good too in terms of blowing people out.
yeah,
I mean, just to give you some idea, they obviously none of these teams, like I said, it's like Washington. They're kind of weaker teams, but they put up 63 against Hawaii, 51 against UCF, another 45 against Colorado, 49 against Penn State, a team that beat Ohio State. They beat them 49-10. They beat Wisconsin 14-7. That was a closer game. And then they beat Rutgers 78-0, and then beat Illinois 41-8. So they're looking really strong, consistent, which I think is what the committee's looking for.
yeah, definitely. So, are there any other college games you want to talk about before we transition here into the NFL for the last portion of the show?
No, I guess look out for the the ranked teams, see how they do. It'll be interesting to see because Louisville's number 5, so they're right on the border of trying to get in. They've only lost that one game to Clemson, and they're at Virginia. Virginia's not that good; they're 2-5, but I just say watch out because Duke almost upset Louisville a few weeks ago, and that was a very close game. So I mean, Louisville's not unbeatable, even though they're in the top 5. So I mean, it's possible that teams can slip up. I don't think they'll lose, but just watch out for that game. Watch out for Nebraska, Wisconsin too, because Nebraska's making a case. They're number 7, playing at number 11, Wisconsin. They're making a case to try to make that top 4.
Nebraska's undefeated too.
Yeah, so I think that could be a very interesting game, right?
Nebraska has a big opportunity in these next 2 weeks because they play a ranked Wisconsin team and then they play Ohio State after that. Both games will be very hard because both games are on the road for Nebraska, but I mean, if they can end up winning both of those games, then they all of a sudden would put themselves into a very good position here at coming towards the end of the season too.
No question about it, especially since those teams are highly regarded now. Wisconsin, they kind of came out of nowhere here. They are able to compete with the top echelon of teams in the Big Ten. And what an opportunity for them. They get to play them 2 straight weeks on the road. So if they win those games, that's going to look especially good because they're on the road. They're playing at those teams, especially with Ohio State being the team that's ranked ahead of them. If they're able to go to Ohio State and beat them, that looks really good. And I think the committee would have a really hard time excluding them, or at least not considering them. They'd have a hard time with that, especially if they go undefeated as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot still to happen and a lot of what-if scenarios to play out in college football. But yeah, it should be a good weekend this week, as we said, with Washington and Clemson having to play their toughest remaining games of their regular season schedules, looking to stay undefeated, and then the game between Nebraska and Wisconsin as well. So it should be a good college football weekend, but it also should be a good weekend in the NFL here as well. Locally, the Giants have their bye week coming off of playing in London last week, so they're not going to be in action. But and then the Jets have the Browns, the winless Browns, so I mean that should be a win for the Jets. But there still are some good matchups in the NFL this weekend. So do you want to get into our picks here?
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, so there's another game for a second week in a row. There's going to be another game played in London. This time it is between the Washington Redskins and the Cincinnati Bengals. So how do you think that one's going to play out?
That could be interesting because Washington, they had started 0-2, won 4 straight, and then lost last week. And Cincinnati just looked like a train wreck. They've been struggling left and right. I like to take the Redskins in this one because I think they're going to try to bounce back here. I just don't think Cincinnati is that good right now, and I don't think they're going to get any better. Last week they played the Cleveland Browns, so that wasn't much of a victory. I mean, they're winless, so I mean they're kind of expected to beat that team. So I think Washington's going to try to rebound from the tough loss last week to Detroit. They only lost by a field goal. They were winning that game, and then Detroit came back. So I'm going to take the Redskins.
All right. Yeah, as you said, the Redskins lost last week in a close one to the Lions, and the Bengals beat the Browns. But I'll go take the other team here. I'll go with Cincinnati. They are 3-4, but their losses have all been to, I would say, like top 10 teams in the NFL, because they've lost to the Steelers, the Broncos. So I think if the Bengals want to make a push for the playoffs, then it's going to have to start now.
I mean, they've beaten some decent teams. They beat the Ravens. Obviously, they're struggling right now, but they've in the past been historically good. So they have a lot of respect around that. They didn't beat Kansas City, but I think that they could be a threat still in that division going forward. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna take them over Tampa Bay.
Well, Tampa Bay is actually not that bad. They blew out San Francisco last week. I mean, granted, San Francisco.
But they're terrible though.
Yeah, it's very bad. But they did beat the Panthers the week before that. They beat the Falcons in week 1. So I think this could be a close game. I think Tampa Bay could definitely make this game competitive. I think Oakland is, as you said, is definitely having a pretty good season. Definitely better than they have been at all in recent memory. Last week that was their first win that was kind of convincing win, because all their games have been pretty close, but they finally ended up blowing out a team last week in Jacksonville. So they're coming back to Florida again this week to play Tampa Bay. So I think it'll be a close game, maybe determined by a field goal, but I guess I will give the slight edge to the Raiders on that one. So next is the Seattle Seahawks at the New Orleans Saints.
I'm going to take Seattle in this one. I just think they're the better team. They're the stronger team. New Orleans has really struggled early on in the season here. They're 2-4. Seattle is 4-1-1 because last week their game against Arizona ended in a tie after both kickers missed potentially game-winning field goals. Who would have saw that coming?
That was a crazy game.
Wasn't it?
One of the weirdest endings to an NFL game I've ever seen.
I know, because Arizona had it all lined up. They kicked it. It banged off the upright and bounced back, so that was no good. They went into overtime. Or again, both tried again and couldn't get it done, so they ended in a tie. But I think Seattle's going to rebound from this. They're looking really strong here in the get-go, and they really want to grab a stranglehold on that NFC West, and really separate themselves from the rest of those teams. So I'm going to take Seattle in this one.
Yeah, I mean that game between the Seahawks and the Cardinals was one of the craziest endings. Both, as you said, both kickers missing, like 20-something odd yard field goals that really should be chip shots and should be converted like 99% of the time, but they just each happened to miss on Sunday, which was crazy, resulting in a tie. I think the other thing to take out of that game, though, are both teams' defenses looked really good, and both teams' offenses looked really bad. So, I mean, I guess that could raise some question marks for each team in terms of their offense. But I mean, I don't think the New Orleans defense is that good. So I think, as you said, the Seahawks will probably get back on track here and win this weekend.
You sure about that? No ties. No more ties, right?
there's usually like one tie that happens every single year, and I think that was last week. So I would never predict a tie just because of how unlikely they are. But yeah, so after that we have the Detroit Lions at the Houston Texans.
This is actually a tough game to predict because both teams have the same record, 4-3. Both teams have struggled, but we've seen both teams, compete against teams that could be regarded as decent. Although Houston, they just came off of a very bad loss at Denver, 27-9, and they did not look good at all. They lost to Minnesota 31-13, which is also a good team, but they also beat Kansas City 19-12. So Houston, I feel like even though they're at home, their quarterback is just not playing well at all. So I feel much comfortable with Stafford, who's more veteran in the league, better experience. So I'm going to trade this one.
I think this is going to be a close game. I mean, Houston is one of those teams where they're good enough to not be bad, but they're bad enough to not be great, if that makes sense.
No, it does, yeah. Makes sense.
Because they win against the teams they're pretty much supposed to win against, but they lose against the good team. They got blown out by the really good teams, by Denver, by Minnesota, by New England.
Yep.
I think, and all of those games were on the road. So Houston is actually undefeated at home. They're 4-0 at home. So I think this is pretty much an even game. Because they're at home, I will go with the Texans and pick them in a close game. But I mean, I don't see the Texans being able to go anywhere in the playoffs. I think they'll be good enough in their bad division to make the playoffs, but I don't see them really becoming any much better than where they are at right now.
I absolutely agree. I think if they make the playoffs, they're just going to be one game and then out, pretty much.
So the next game is one I mentioned earlier, the Jets at the 0-7 Cleveland Browns.
Oh, God, this is such a difficult pick. God, I honestly have no idea. No, I'm just kidding. The Jets, all the way. Even though they're kind of in a free fall here, their quarterback situation got very messy. Geno Smith went down injured. They've been switching him out with Fitzpatrick, or Pick Patrick, should we say. But I just don't think they're going to stoop to the level of the Browns, which is winless. So I think the Jets get to 3-5 here and get a much-needed win to try to salvage what's left of their season.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets should definitely win this game, but that doesn't mean that they will win this game. Because, I mean, I don't know, it's just something if any team were to lose to the Browns, I see, it's something that the Jets would do. They would go and lose to Cleveland.
Yeah.
Because the Jets are kind of up and down right now. Fitzpatrick was benched, but yeah, when he did come in because he had to for the injury, he did actually start to play well. So I think, I can see the Jets losing this game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets lose this game. I mean, I still can't pick Cleveland just because they're Cleveland, but I mean, I don't think the Jets are gonna win in a blowout. And if the Browns win, I wouldn't be surprised. But I guess I will pick the Jets in this one. So next is the Patriots at the Bills.
This could be a very interesting game. Just because Buffalo's at home, I feel like they're a better home team than a road team. And last time they went to Gillette, they ended up shutting out the Patriots, which is pretty much unprecedented. They won 16-0. I think New England's going to come back looking for revenge. Brady's back. That was still when Brady was suspended when they won 16-0, and they had problems because then his backup Garoppolo was hurt, so they had to rely on the backup to Garoppolo to come in, which is the third stringer. So I think it's really hard to pick against the Patriots. There's also last game because there's like a pregame scuffle that went down. There's a little bit of a fight, and the Bills have said that because apparently what happened was one of the Patriots players walked in front of the Bills when they were warming up, and they kind of took that as a sign of disrespect. So the Bills have already said if they're going to try anything, they're not going to be afraid to start something. So I think this could be a very emotional game for both sides. The Patriots looking for revenge, whereas the Bills are just looking for a little bit of respect from them. I think it's very hard to pick against the Patriots. I'm going to go with New England in this one.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the Bills didn't beat the Patriots earlier this season, but that was without Brady, so I don't think there's really too much to be said after that. The Bills, they had been starting to look like a pretty good team. They had won 4 games in a row, blowing up the Rams and 4 games to then they lose to Miami.
Yeah.
John McCoy is down 50. Yeah, best. And this is tough right now. So I think to them early season, especially with Brady.
This will be interesting because Blaine himself had to get Carolina. It's as simple as that. I think they're going to try to, step back, and this is a win they'd like to have against a decent, Arizona Cardinals team, a team that had success in the playoffs. Carolina, a little bit of revenge for that. I think Carolina's coming off of a bye. That means they dropped the 31 on. They lost to Atlanta. They look weak, and then the Vikings scored 22, just a little bit better and more skill. But if you can't play games, I'm gonna take. This could go either way.
Yeah, I think definitely the game. The Panthers are coming off their bye, and the Cardinals are coming off that weird tie against Seattle. Both teams really need to win this game. So I think it really could go either way. But I think I don't know. I could change my mind tomorrow.
No, I'm with you too. This is tough. It's a tough game.
Because this is a tough game, but I'm right now I'm gonna say Carolina just because they're 1-5. They're desperate. They need a victory to have any hope of salvaging their season. I don't know what state lines Arizona will be in after tying that game last week. Carolina is at home, coming off Humans do have a really great game. So I now with the Panthers.
I'm with you. I could change my mind. That's gonna be a really tough game to predict. The reason why I didn't pick Carolina right because of their defense and the way I've seen them before, they've let teams really just waltz into the end zone, walk right in on them, and score. So that's the only reason why I wouldn't pick them, even though they're at home. I think they're really going to want to try to, save their season before it gets too late. So I just don't know about their defense, though.
Yeah. So next is the Chargers.
It's an interesting game because San Diego was able to stun Denver the first time they played them in Seattle, which was only a couple weeks ago. Obviously, Denver's going to be wanting, some payback, some revenge. But I don't think we can count out San Diego just yet, even though they've had a terrible start. They found a lot of interesting ways to lose games, to blow leads. But they've shown they can beat this team. They can beat Super Bowl, reigning champion quality team, and they went to beat them on the road, 33-30 in overtime, which a lot of people probably didn't see coming. I don't think I picked them last week, so I think this Chargers team is starting to figure things out. I mean, beating those quality teams, so I'm gonna actually stick with San Diego in this one.
All right. Yeah, I think this could be a close game. Denver though rebounded pretty well last week, beating Houston by a lot at home. And yeah, the Chargers have that come from behind win in Atlanta. So I think this one will probably be a close game, but I think I'm going to go with Denver probably in a close game, maybe by a field goal or something at home. So next is the Packers and the Falcons.
This will be interesting because the Falcons, they started out pretty well, but then they've lost a couple in a row, which they definitely should have won, but they didn't. And everyone thinks that this is going to be a repeat of last year when they started out so good and then just collapsed and imploded during the middle of the season. So this will be an interesting bounce-back game for them. Green Bay is a decent team. But I think they're at home. I like Atlanta's chances. And they're really going to want to bounce back from the ugly loss against the Chargers, which they definitely should have won at home. So I'm going to go with the Falcons.
All right, I'll disagree again here and take the Packers. I don't know. I think Atlanta, I'm not completely sold on, and I just think they find ways to lose games. And I think the Packers are more of a consistent team, having been playing their best last week. So I'll pick the Packers. And Sunday is an NFC East battle: the Eagles at the Cowboys.
God, is there a way that both these teams can lose? Like, honestly, does one of them have to win?
Well, they can tie if you want to pick a tie again.
Yeah, no, I just wish both these teams could lose, honestly. I think this could be a very interesting game. I feel like it could be close. Dallas has been playing really well. Philadelphia, I'm still not completely sold on exactly because I feel like they lost games they should have won. But they did beat the Vikings, who were previously undefeated. That was their first loss, so they looked really good there. But at the Redskins, I think they should have won that game. They should have beaten the Detroit Lions, and they didn't. So I'm not completely sold on them just yet. And Dallas looks like they're playing really well. They got Dak Prescott QB. Looks like they're rolling right now. And Ezekiel Elliott, I mean, he's been playing really well too. So it's really hard to pick against the way Dallas is playing. And they're at home, so I guess I'm going to pick Dallas.
Yeah, I picked Dallas too. Just because they're at home, they're coming off their bye. And then Minnesota against Chicago, we probably both think Minnesota will win that game, right?
Absolutely. 5-1 against 1-6. Chicago's look terrible. Minnesota's look great. Enough said.
Right. So yeah, it's 4 o'clock now. So that'll wrap up the show. Thanks for listening on the Nick Aaron Sports Talk Radio Show. We'll be back next week with you. Is there any last words you have?
No, just thank you for watching. For all you Facebook Live, we're watching the live stream. We thank you for watching, and we thank you for your comments. Please stay tuned, for our show next week. Let us know what you think, comments, concerns, anything we should talk about. Just let us know. But thank you for listening to this week's edition of the Nick, Josh, and Aaron Sports Talk Radio Show, and we'll see you next week.
Yep, thanks. Have a good week, everybody.
Yep, have a good week.